and welcome to another Biddle on Saturday, July 20th. How is everybody doing?
I'm at a pool party.
Excellent, thank you.
Good. All good here, thank you.
All right.
Fantastic.
I knew you were doing fantastic, Nate. Somehow, I knew.
Heat wave. Heat wave.
I love the heat.
All right.
Oh yeah, I'm in the
Can we get a sound check from chat, and then we'll be good to go? This week, we tried out Bodhi Linux, and we are going to have changes to the distro challenge coming up that we will discuss later in the show. But for right now, we're going to go ahead with the Bodhi Linux challenge and see what everybody's thoughts are. Zeb, do you want to start out?
I certainly do. I was actually looking forward to this week's challenge because when I first started with Linux, Bodhi was one of the first distributions that I found that worked for me back then. And Jeff Hoogland was so helpful and responsive when you put questions out wherever you put them out. So what a disappointment when I got there, and no matter what I did, I could not get it to work with three screens. Now, I don't know whether that was the desktop environment or because everything else is just Ubuntu based. So whilst I could run it on a single monitor, that's not what I do these days. So mine was very, very short. It got a polite next because I wasn't prepared to lose 35%, 40%, if not 60% of my real estate. So it still looks as good and quick and as polished as ever. But the fact that it wouldn't work with three screens in 2019 was a bit of a shame. So, yeah, I just moved quickly on.
Moving quickly on. Hey, not every distro that we try is going to be for everybody. But I think that it's good that we appreciate all the work that the developers do, regardless of what distro that is. So, Eric, sir, you are up.
Yes, hello. So I did not give it a chance on bare metal. I did try it in a VM though. I've limited feedback, but basically I found it to be very interesting. I like different takes on UIs, and I thought it was. I had tried E17 a decade or more ago. I mean, it's been a very long time. So I felt there was a level of polish that I hadn't seen before, and I was really impressed with some of the visual elements. Just a lot of fun things that were engaging and really made it interesting to use. It's not something that I could see myself using on a regular basis. However, the fact that once it was booted, it was around, I think, 180 megabytes of memory used. That was pretty impressive. So I could definitely see, if you had an older system or a system where your memory was a high commodity, that this could be useful for that. So that's about it, though. That's really the only feedback I had.
Very nice. Joe, did you get to try Bodhi Linux?
I always have to prove that I have it on here. So.
Well, you don't have to prove it to us, Joe.
I know. Honestly, I didn't spend a ton of time with it, and part of the reason was it wasn't so much just the life events I've got going on as I always talked about, but one of the things that I don't like about any distro is when I can't hit the super key and have the menu come up or start searching or whatever. And it's very, let's put it this way, it's pretty. But I think that's probably about it for me. It wouldn't be a distro that I think that I could see myself using. I do see that, like Eric said, that I think there's been a lot of work that's gone into it, but it seemed actually for me more confusing trying to find what I consider to be the normal things. Have to scroll through all these different menus, and even on the bottom, I think it was the audio. The pop-up window always cuts off the text, and you got to have a scroll bar to even. It just, there's a lot of odd things for the little bit of time I've spent on it. It was one of those things that if it doesn't start rubbing me some way where I want to even try to learn it, I kind of do like Zeb said, a polite next. I don't think it. I think for the right people and somebody that would like this type of a flavor, it would be awesome. But it's not for me. So that's probably about as far as I got with it.
All right. Thank you. Nate, what do you got to say?
So I did play with Bodhi for quite a while, and I know Steve, who I think he just slipped in at the last minute here. I know he's a big Bodhi fan. He introduced me to Bodhi, or started talking to me. He's the one that first introduced me to Bodhi some time ago. I hadn't tried it though. I said I was going to, and look, see, I just did. So what I like about Bodhi, it does have very low memory usage, and actually I got it 183 meg is actually the number that I got after let the system settle. And it was very responsive. It'd be a fine candidate for any low-end hardware, I would say. I'd definitely put that in my stack of use this on low-end hardware distributions. The default themes were all acceptable as far as I'm concerned because they were all dark. So somebody knows what they're doing over there and just dumped all the light themes. That's a huge thumbs up.
I totally agree.
The quick start guide I thought was quite fantastic. So you're immediately greeted with an HTML page that just takes you to different places to help you out. And they have a pretty decent wiki, I would say. The forums appear to be helpful. They have a fairly active live help through Discord. So I don't see why anybody couldn't get along pretty well with it. And since Enlightenment is way better than GNOME, I would go for that over GNOME any day. So what I don't like, I should say I don't know if I don't like it, but it felt a little bit. I couldn't put my thumb on it exactly, but it felt a little early 2000s feeling. Like the effects were as such that I couldn't quite. It was like really modern and really, I'm not sure. It was almost like an overabundance of animations. Not that I think that's bad. This is coming from a guy that likes the bouncing icon and plasma. So, what do I have? I have no room to talk there. The hidden, the installation launcher was hidden, which kind of annoyed me. It'd been nice if they would have had a little more readily available. And if the menu just had a search function, it would make it feel less clunky. But outside of that, I thought it was great. It's not for me for full time, but I can definitely see where somebody might need that for some, either for some older hardware or they really like that kind of interface experience. So, I give it at least one thumb up, maybe a second, but maybe not quite. So at least one thumb up.
Nate, the way you described that, I guess is kind of what I would say too. Is I almost felt like you had to work harder to find and do things out of it a little bit because everything's, like you said, seemed to be hidden.
I don't know. I found the desktop pretty easy to navigate. Now, I was not, used to obviously left clicking and seeing a menu come up. That was just, and me personally, I happen to click on the desktop pretty often. That's just a habit of mine. And I don't know how many times that menu came up constantly because I've just have this habit of clicking on it. But I thought it was set up actually pretty nice. The one thing I didn't like about it was the icons on the left, the shortcuts to programs. They have a really nice animation that if you hover over them, it has an animation to it. But also, if you hover over it, it has a tooltip that comes up, which is in front of and hides the animation. So I think there should be one or the other.
Or maybe have one go above the other.
Yeah, like somehow it just defeated the purpose of having an animation and a tooltip. I think you need a tooltip because maybe you don't know what that program is that's there, but it was just weird to have both. But the idea that you can click in the menu and change the theme right from the menu is awesome. I'm not a green fan, obviously. I'm not Ryan. But I changed it to the blue dark and it was fabulous. So I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool myself.
For what it's worth, the first thing I did was change that click as well because it was really driving me crazy. And you can just remap it to the right click and get on with your life.
Well, I was going to say a lot of it's from the hangover from it being a window manager is really what it is.
Yeah.
The project, the project started out as a window like Enlightenment itself, so it has a lot of weird Fluxbox type stuff going in with it, i.e. the clicking for the menu.
So how much of it, Matt, do you know how much of it is left over from Enlightenment or new features and what is left over and what is not?
It's in this weird halfway stage because they're doing some stuff that is completely new for Moshka, but there's a lot of old E17 cruft that goes with it. So it's this weird kind of like amalgamation of things. So you'll occasionally see like something that's supposed to be labeled like Moshka is actually labeled Enlightenment. It's just it's stuff where they're still fixing the fork basically, and it's a small team, so it's not going to get the speed like a Cinnamon or anything.
Yeah, and at one time Jeff actually walked away from the project because of family life and all the rest of it. But then after 3 months, there was such a furore from the community that they dragged him back in, kicking and screaming. And one of the things that Nate reminded me of was, I think one of the reasons why I settled on it when I first came to Linux was, excuse me, was the unusual website installation of software. I found it great just clicking through a familiar interface of a website and think, oh, I'll try that, click, installed. Oh, I'll try that, click. Instead of trying to find my way around the distribution and work out what software center it's got or what the command line was. So for me, I think that was one of the reasons why in the early days I stayed with it. So that was cool.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. What is presentation mode on here? Because again, I'm not familiar with this. This was totally new to me, and it pops up from time to time talking about presentation mode. Because, like Rocco said too, I mean, even like down in the menu, you used to when you highlight over an icon, when it tells you what it is, it usually pops above it. Everything's over the top, of itself, and so it seemed a little confusing to me. But I'm not sure what the presentation. So I'd like to know.
Joe, I think what it is, what I figured out what it was, is it's like the same thing as, like if you ever use like caffeine or something to keep the screensaver from popping up. Right. That's what it is. I may be wrong, but that was what I figured out.
Oh, I think you're correct.
Anything like it is in XFCE. XFCE has the exact same thing, labeled the exact same thing. You just click on it and it keeps the screen on indefinitely or until your computer dies.
And it's right there in the menu. You can turn it on. You can turn it off.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Steve, for that, Nate, and everybody else. Thomas, did you try it, and what did you think?
Yes, I did briefly try it. Overall, I did like it. Like Nathan was saying, the dark themes, I greatly appreciate that. I hate light themes with a burning passion, especially when I'm doing things late at night like I typically do and don't want to destroy my eyes. I did feel like there was a little bit too much animation, and I'm one of those guys that I like to turn off all my animations. So if I feel like there's too many animations, it does bug me. One thing that bugged me is I couldn't hit Control-T to launch the terminal, which is typically a default thing, which finding the terminal in general was a chore for me because it's not labeled like terminal emulator. It's not labeled command line or anything like that. You can't hit Control-T. There may be some other keyboard shortcut that I didn't think to do, but it's named terminology.
It's a specific terminal.
Yeah,
for
it's a really weird name. That's all that it was. And once I figured that out, it was okay. Overall, I did kind of like it. I probably would not use it in my daily life because it feels like it's geared more towards people who they want to get work done and less people who want to get work done and game and a few other things out there. Because I like to work, of course, but I also like to play games occasionally. And because of that, it doesn't really feel like you'd want to game on this distro. I guess you could, but doesn't really seem like the distro to do it.
Which, ironically, Steam actually does come pre-installed on the app pack version.
I did not try the app pack. I tried the standard.
Oh, you tried the 3 application distro version.
Yeah.
What makes you say that it's not for gamers?
Well, part of it is, so it comes with a 4.15 kernel, which you can game on most any kernel, but you want a newer kernel explicitly above the 5.0 kernel if you have latest gen hardware, especially if you have an Nvidia RTX card and you want that ray tracing support. you have to have a 5.0 kernel unless that capability has been backported. And
so can you tell me which games are running RTX at the moment in Linux?
I don't know because I don't have an RTX card to test with.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware,
I don't know.
Anyway, they're all Windows based.
Even in Windows, not many run RTX.
Right. Yeah, but eventually more are going to do it. It's like when they started doing rasterization. Yeah.
Well, keep in mind, Jeff, the main developer, he actually is a professional gamer.
Really?
Living. Yeah. And so he games on it all the time. And on top of that, it is based on LTS. That's why it's using the 415 kernel. So
yeah,
you got to keep those things in mind. That's
and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That 415 kernel is a good stable kernel. That's why the LTS release uses it. It's just I'm a stickler for kernel versions. I like having the latest and greatest kernel versions. So when I see a distro using something older than like 418, 419, I'm just like, ugh.
So it's not like it wouldn't work, Thomas.
Correct. It should work on most any hardware.
And you can also jump on a HWE kernel if you want, which I think is 418 something at the moment. So that pops up three versions, and it's Ubuntu based, so it's easy.
Right. Or you could always just drop in a low latency kernel.
Right. Next.
Yeah. But my point being, I don't feel like it's good for gaming. I feel like it's a good distro in general. Like you can get a lot of work done on it. It's just got a lot of quirks here and there that you'd have to get used to. Mm-hmm. The left clicking on the desktop, pulling up the menu confused the heck out of me, especially coming from XFCE where it's default right click pulls up the menu. Just like spamming right click. Where is the menu? So, but it's not a bad distro. If you don't game a lot, I would definitely suggest it, especially if you like dark themes. Especially if you're used to Ubuntu, but I wouldn't suggest it in most other cases.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right. Well, thanks very much indeed for that. Chris, did you try Bodhi?
Yes, I did, and I actually put a preliminary review up on the. I can't remember what was the forum URL.
Discourse.
Discourse. Yes. Anyway, I put the preliminary review up on Discourse. The main thing that I had was again I was having problems with the partitions taking. I don't know if it's me or what, but just going down to a command line from another distro and setting the boot flag on the boot file system seemed to clear that up. So I mean that was easily fixed. Getting it up and running, I had told it to download the updates, and foolish me thought it was going to apply the updates as well. And so when I did apt update and apt upgrade, there was close to about 1,700 packages that it applied, which it went fast. So I was, I wasn't really in a huge hurry anyway. So I could, it didn't really faze me. It just kind of surprised me that after checking that checkbox, I still had a lot of updates to apply. Everything else seemed to be fine. It seems to work, be stable. And so let me get this straight. We got dark themes, and let's see. I didn't check to see if it did double click or single click.
Double click.
Double click.
It was
okay, sorry, Rocco.
It's okay.
And then overall, I find it mostly harmless.
Cool. Just to clear up something so that people know, because it used to confuse me as well. When you're doing any Ubuntu-based distribution and you click that download updates while installing, that's all it's doing. It's just downloading them and caching them, so that when you then get there, it installs them automatically. It installs them the first time you run an update. So it's not updating the system while you're installing it. It's just downloading them ready to use afterwards, so it appears quicker. So that's why people go, oh, but I updated it during the install. No, you just downloaded them ready for when you wanted to run them.
Really
good info. Good info.
That's kind of the philosophy, one of the things I always have a disagreement with apt is the fact that you got to do 2 commands to actually apply any kind of updates, and that's one of the major reasons why I resisted going to any kind of Debian flavor.
Yeah, it soon becomes a habit, though. And in the end, I don't think you realize you just type 2 commands. Your body just does it.
Or you macro it, put it in
yeah, that's true.
Script,
So, Barb, did you try?
Yes, I did. And I had an interesting time. I thought I would try it I gave up on my old ThinkPad 420. I think it died. So I thought, well, I've got this other one sitting there. Well, it didn't. I had a hard time with it because that one has a higher resolution screen than 1920 by 1080. And I think that Bodhi can't handle anything higher. And I don't think it's an Ubuntu problem, because I've put Ubuntu 18.04 on that machine before. In fact, that's what it had. And I didn't have a problem with it. Once I set it, set it to 1920, whatever, it stayed there. So that was one thing. So then I said, I'll try something else. I tried that twice. It didn't work. So I actually put a kind of like a summary of what I did up on the discourse.BigDaddyLinux. Anyway, so then I said, okay, I'll try it on. I've got a T440S that I used when I was teaching, and I picked it up really cheaply and didn't worry if something happened to it in school. So I used that and it installed perfectly. The first time I tried, it was like I couldn't find anything. So I ended up trying to get it to look the way I wanted it to look, and I broke it. I broke Bodhi. And
Barb, I'm the one that usually does that, okay?
I know. I've never broken an Ubuntu-based distro before. So that was a first for me.
Well, did you break the base or did you break the desktop? There's a difference.
I think I broke the desktop, and I said, oh, screw this. And I tried it one more time. I gave it one more time. So it was like a total of 5 attempts to get this. That's normally not me. Normally I'll give it up to 3, and then I go, screw this, and won't waste my time. But there was something about, I liked the way it was, and there was something about it that made me want to actually get it to work. Usually, it's also because I'm bored silly. It's the summer. And I'm a teacher, and so what am I doing in the summer? How much often can I talk to the dog, But anyway, so I finally got it on there, and I said, I'm just going to work with it the way it wants to work. And I got it to work exactly how I wanted it to work. And I like it. I am one of those people that once I have something set up, I don't want to change it. You can turn off a lot of those animations, by the way, because I don't like bouncy things, and I don't like wibbly wobbly windows, which fortunately didn't have. I never was a fan of that stuff. That to me was just kind of like fluff. And so I got it to work, and I was using it since Thursday afternoon, and I was using it even today. Everything I put on it worked. The thing that I found was a little weird, and it's not an Ubuntu 18.04, because I have it. In fact, 18.04 is on this machine with running Ubuntu Mate, the one I'm using right now. There were 3 programs that I found required that you run it from the command line, which to me, I've never had to do that with Ubuntu. One was Synaptic. That was one. The other was GDebi and Gparted. Gparted, I can almost see where you don't want people to go in and, if they don't know what they're doing, kind of trash the drives. But those are the 3 that I found. Now, I don't know, did anybody else find anything like that, or is it just me?
I think that's due to the fact that needs sudo permissions. All 3 of those programs do.
Yeah, but no, I'm saying but you couldn't just like click on it and then it pops up asking you for the root password, which is what Ubuntu does.
Right. You did it. Did you do an update after you did the install?
Yes.
Because
and then I rebooted. And, I mean, yeah.
Right. There is a program for all those graphical programs that require sudo access called eSudo. However, that broke, and that was because the Ubuntu base broke it.
Oh, okay.
Update that came in like last January. So you kind of have to change over to either install the new, package kit or whatever that Ubuntu uses in GTK desktops in order to fix that, so that you get a graphical prompt that comes up when you click on those programs that asks you for sudo permission, or you run them from the command line using sudo.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I just ran it from the command line, so it didn't bother me. But that I just thought was kind of weird.
Issue that they're going to try to fix when they do a refresh of the ISO. That's one of the big bugs that came in, and it wasn't the fault of the developers. It's just the fault of the Ubuntu base changed something so they could no longer use eSudo.
Okay, that's. I mean, as long as it still worked, I was fine with it. But I was just kind of surprised with that. Now, one thing that I found, and maybe that goes along with what the Zeb's experience. I tried to plug in my external monitor. I have just one. It's a 27-inch external monitor. It would not see it on my from my laptop. So that's kind of like what you were having, right, Zeb, where you had you couldn't use more than one monitor. Is that, I mean, it could have just been the older laptop that I was putting it on, but I know that laptop can see that monitor, can recognize it. So that was one of the other things. And I thought, well, for what I use that laptop for, I don't really care. And that was the only other thing that I found that, like, really, if that was my only laptop, that would have become a problem. I'm going to keep it on that laptop, and I don't use that laptop all that much, and I just liked it. It booted up incredibly fast. From the time once Grub gets going, it was like, what was it, 4 seconds or something to the login screen, and then after the login screen, it was like 8.5 seconds to a working desktop. I mean, that was nice. And I don't get that on anything that I have now that I'm using. And the shutdown, when you shut it down, it was like 4.5 seconds, done. None of this sitting there spinning and thinking and doing whatever, like Ubuntu Mate sometimes says, okay, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm going to be doing this for 3 or 4 minutes. So you just leave it and walk away and come back and it's done.
There are a few distros out there, including the Ubuntus, that just take forever to shut down. And,
I actually want to find the person who thought 90 seconds was an appropriate timeout for commands, giving them a chance to work. Really? 90 seconds? I mean, that just
yeah. I'm right there with you.
Because if there's 3 of them, that's like 3 times 190, well, 3 times 90 seconds. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, I really liked it, and I am going to keep it on that laptop. And it does the things that I can use my scanner. The scanner software looked like it was older than what even comes with Ubuntu 1804. That I did notice, that the scan light didn't seem, or simple scan looked like it was like a previous generation.
Some of that does have to do with the UI elements in Enlightenment more than anything else in Moshka.
Well, that's what I figured, but it's usable and I can get the same resolution and it works just as well. And it sees my file server and I can print and do whatever and scan. So those are some of the important things for me, and it stays out of my way. I had it set up and I was just doing my stuff and no problems. So I actually liked it, and I am going to be leaving it on that laptop.
So I would just like to point out, this is the non-distro hopping person.
I know.
Just gonna say.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, my daily driver has Ubuntu Mate 1904 on it. My backup, which is this one, has Ubuntu Mate 18.04. So.
But it's not going to take the place of Mate.
No,
because there are things that I can do with Mate and lay my screen out a certain way that I can't put all those little they don't have some of those cool little, as they call them, gadgets, the little widgets that you can stick up on the top.
Well,
so, and I did put my review in the discourse.BigDaddyLinux.
Nice.
A plug for the forums. If ever anybody wants to go there, we've been talking all week in the forums about everything, including Bodhi, and you should join. Just saying.
A lot of people reviewed Bodhi, and we're talking about other distros, like cool stuff going on. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. In fact, that's where I read Steve's stuff about, like, he gave that list of all the bugs and the issues, which then answered a bunch of my questions. I was like, oh, okay.
Yep. And see, the best thing about the forums was Steve posted that and it didn't get lost in the shuffle like it would in Telegram. Where if you didn't see it, or if you had 600 messages in Telegram and you just decided to scroll to the bottom, you missed everything they said. So that's excellent to be in the forums where it's always there. All right, Paul, sir, did you get to try Bodhi Linux?
I did really quick under VirtualBox. Download the osboxes.com version. And if it wasn't for the left-right click thing, I might have liked it, but that annoyed the heck out of me. So I said, next.
I got to say, that was something I had to get used to in that.
Yeah.
So
other than that, I mean.
But see, I didn't turn it off. I left it on because I want to make sure I kind of get the vibe of what they're going for there. And once you set up the favorite applications in the right click menu, you know, it actually does have a decent workflow in that sense if you can get used to it. So
if you can get but I couldn't. So
right. All right, Tony.
He's just going for his mute button.
There we go.
How are you, sir?
I'm all right, thanks. How's everybody?
Awesome. Bodhi Linux?
Yes.
Did you try it?
Yes.
Did you like it?
Actually, yes. Funny enough. There was something about it which appealed. It sort of looked kind of old-fashioned, but kind of modern at the same time. I couldn't quite put my finger on exactly why that was, but that's how it felt to me. But the biggest problem I had with it was initially, I ran it off a pen drive, no problem. I then went to install it and no internet. I read the welcome page, which I thought would be helpful. And it said, in the dock or whatever you want to call it at the bottom, you'll find an icon, which will allow you to do your internet. No icon. So I left it for a day or two, went out and bought a long Ethernet cable and connected it that way. Still didn't show me anything, but it was connected. When I did all the updates, unfortunately, I didn't read what somebody had written in the Discord. Not Discord, no. What's
Discourse?
Discourse. Until afterwards, I left it running for 20 minutes and thought, blow this for a lark, it's not doing anything. So I shut it down, set it up again, and it was already updated. So that was fine. And then there was a little icon that popped up at the bottom that said, you're connected to the internet. And I thought, there it is. If you hadn't got an internet connection to start with via the Ethernet cable, you'd never be able to do the updates to get it. But it did work quite well. I didn't like the green theme at all, but as somebody else said, I did find a blue theme and changed that over, and the left click on the desktop was a bit weird. It took me a while to find that. But I don't think I'd use it as a daily driver. But it was interesting.
I'm going to have to agree with you that it does have that, like, I don't know what you want to say, dated look, but it also blends a somewhat modernish look to it. And I don't have the right words for it either, Tony, but I think it has a certain appeal to it, like you said.
It does. It made me want to get it installed and to run it. Whereas some other ones, if there's problems, I'll just not bother.
That's how I felt. That's why I kept working on it and getting it, trying to get it. It was just, there was something that was very intriguing about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Enlightenment, though, if you remember, Moksha is basically what it was like in 2005 when Enlightenment E17 came out. It always was from an old generation. You know, you're talking back in the days of GNOME 1, GNOME 2, and then also KDE, 1, 2, 3 maybe. So those old desktops, and yet it had a very modern feel because it had animations that none of the other desktops could do. It could do things that none of the other desktops could do, but used way less resources. So it was always ahead of its time, but yet it really hasn't changed much in Moksha, so it feels old to us now.
Yeah. Right.
I think if they carry on developing it and improving it, it could turn out to be a very good distro.
All right, Tyler, sir, Bodhi Linux.
Yeah, with it being Prime Week and being busy all week long, I did not get a chance to give it a try.
Oh, well, that's all good. That's all good. It happens from time to time. Magnus, you're up, my friend. Did you try Bodhi?
Yes, I did. And I must say it's the first time I've used Enlightenment. And I've just never had any interest in trying it, and I'm kind of positively surprised. It works quite nicely, and I'm very surprised with the low resource consumption as well. I only run it in a virtual machine, and the one thing that is bothering me with so it's like some distros. I usually always use a QEMU through GNOME boxes. And because it's become so good now that usually you can expect pretty nice performance and that stuff works out of the box, especially with Linux and with the newer kernels. But with some distros, they have a tendency to forget the resolution you choose, even if you install the guest editions, and this is one of them. But I guess, if you installed it on hardware, then that's not a problem. But otherwise, I could get used to this. Definitely, I could. The terminals are a little bit blingy with a shaded background, which is kind of funny. I think. It's a little bit 2000s, early 2000s.
You hit backspace one too many times, and that'll wake you up.
Really? Let me just try it.
It's got like a little thing that goes on. Yeah.
Yeah, and also when you autocomplete, you get that ding.
Well, the other thing is that the window, like if I use my mouse, the mouse wheel on something, it would just roll it right up into the title bar and then roll it back down when I brought
the shade.
The window shade. But I thought that was kind of cool, But because then I checked and said, yeah, no, Ubuntu doesn't do that.
I gotta get used to this left clicking on the desktop, and it pops up with a menu. Because for some reason, I've just worked this into my normal daily behavior of working. Is that I kind of deselect my current window with just clicking on the desktop, and this menu pops up that has this reminiscence of university back in the day when we had these Sun workstations and you could start apps through the desktop. You right click on the desktop, so you could choose the app with CDE. That was time. That was woo. Anyway, but I don't know if you can change that, because that's a little bit annoying. But otherwise, it's I could get used to this, and I like the theme. I usually don't choose black themes because I have a tendency to feel like I'm not as productive for some reason with black themes. Although they are nicer on the eyes, it's a little bit like I get more done when it's a bright theme. I don't know. It's a psychological thing or something.
That's because you're trying to get away from a computer as quickly as possible.
Oh, yeah. I should probably do that, yeah. Get out in the heat.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks very much indeed for that, Magnus. It's appreciated. Jonathan, did you try Bodhi?
Brief. Well, yeah, a little bit. So, I booted up I hadn't used this in quite a while. It'd been, I want to say like 7 years. I ran this on my EPC. It ran pretty well on that back then. I agree with Rocco on the look of Moksha. It's like kind of oldish, but at the same time kind of newish with the effects. I'm not much of a green person either. I like the bluish arc thing as well. I didn't like the I believe by default it does the shade, the window roll up. I had to change that to maximize on double click. That really wasn't my thing. I found it a bit weird when I went to install it. I had to go into preferences to open up the installer. That was pretty weird. But overall, just messing around with the distro, it's I mean it's nice. You got an older machine, something that it doesn't have a whole lot of power behind it. You can throw this on it. It looks you know, newer-ish. It's not like XFCE, and it's fairly functional. So it's a cool little thing.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much indeed for that. Kevin, did you try Bodhi?
I did, and this was kind of a return to the past for me. Bodhi's one of those things I picked up. I don't know, probably a few years after I graduated and stuff. Just kind of messed around with it for a few months, and then moved on to better things or other things, I guess. But it holds a special place in my heart just because it's different. So the things I like about it is like it's charming, I would say, is the word that you were looking for. All of the controls are really tactile. Like just looking at them, you feel like you could touch them, or you get a sense of texture.
That 3D look.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of cool. It's I don't know. It makes me feel good to work in an environment like that. The performance thing, like everybody mentioned, it performs great, and I enjoy that. Somebody mentioned the community. In all of my interactions with anybody in the Bodhi community, everybody's been super welcoming and helpful. So that's been great. And then I do kind of like the Fluxbox paradigm where you with the menu on the desktop and stuff. It makes your workflow pretty efficient, I guess, if you use the mouse a lot, and that's kind of becomes part of your workflow. It can be pretty efficient. Some of the things I didn't like about it, wasn't a super huge fan of the installation being buried in the menus. So like you boot up the live distribution, and I was like, okay, now how do you install this bad boy? But clicking around, you eventually find it there.
Some people do. I didn't.
And then the user experience, like others have stated, I guess, is a bit clunky compared to other modern desktops. But my main concern, I guess, about Bodhi as a project, I guess, is the pursuit of Moksha. I think it's cool, and like they're doing a lot of good work on it and stuff. I get concerned when I see like a smaller group of developers like that taking on a DE, just because I would like to see it like keep in step with some of the modern desktop features and stuff, and I don't know that they have enough people to pull that off. But I'm glad to see that they're definitely trying.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. I think that, Steve had mentioned something earlier in the week that one of the reasons why he had tried it was that it allowed him to install it and just get down to working. And that, I think, is a perfect example of what Bodhi allows you to do. Once you get used to that particular that particular workflow, it allows you to get down to work. I agree with everybody who said about the search in the menu where it doesn't have it. But I think if you buy into the workflow, you don't need it when you have the favorite applications in the right click. And the other thing I want to say is this is probably the only distro that I've tried and tested in months that I haven't changed the wallpaper. Just saying.
Oh, just quickly before you moved on, I had a funny feeling that I cut Magnus off. I think he might have had something else to say, and if I did, Magnus, I apologise. Did I cut you off, Magnus? Oh, I think he's froze. No, yeah, hello.
I don't know.
No,
He
it's
must
fine.
have the volume down.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, sir, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you?
Awesome. Did you try Bodhi this week?
2007 MacBook. Bodhi got installed on it, ran very nicely on it for a week. Have to admit, I did revert it back to its normal Peppermint 10. But it's one of the few that installed nicely. The only niggle I had with it was I had to set the no mode set for some reason in the grub config in order for it not to freak out the display when it's booting up. But I spent enough time in Windows XP and KDE 1 and GNOME 1 and honestly an awesome window manager that the Enlightenment I felt right at home. So it's very comfortable. The only issue I would have preferred, and this is purely personal taste, the welcome screen, which is very good. I just prefer the welcome screens to be an app in the system rather than a web page. But that's purely personal preference. It ran fine. It got me to everything I needed to do it. It ran beautifully. It ran quickly. Got out of my way and let me have fun. So I really enjoyed it. It's just not for me for only because it's not a rolling release.
Right. You're a big rolling release guy.
You know, Rocco, can I interject real quick on something you said? When you talk about, I know you guys have had discussions about workflow. To me, you know, I know workflow could be not only the programs you use, but I look at it as the method on how you get to anything. I know you're talking about favorites, but to me, I like to be able to hit the super key and type 2 or 3 keys, and when I want it's there, and then hit enter, versus having even like I've got a doc on the bottom, but even that gets a little daunting when you got to scroll through if you got a list of them this long. You know,
well, there's no question, Joe. Yeah, there's no question that I would prefer a Windows key or a super key with a being able to type and have a search menu. But I think if you try to get used to the workflow, I think it would be very easy to get used to that with the things that they put in, like the right-click favorites and all that. So,
Steve, do you know if there's an option for something like that?
Yeah, clearly none of you tried the everything launcher, which is
clearly, Steve.
Clearly.
When were you going to tell us about the everything launcher, or did you and I missed it?
When it was his turn to review.
But don't you think though, like we talk a lot about with these, how people moving over from Windows to Linux or whatever, you're used to certain things. Isn't that kind of the same principle even with this, where you're used to a super key and a search bar in today's world of most distros?
Well, I would go back, Joe, to the fact that, yes, you're right, that is a thing where people coming over are expecting that, but I think there's also a place for distros like this that don't require that or don't subscribe to that theory. So you have plenty of distributions out there like Linux Mint and Ubuntu and everything else that do allow for that. This one has a different workflow, and in the same way that Unity had a different workflow, it was completely different. I think this has that same appeal to it, that it's different, and it would appeal to a lot of people.
And it's not just coming over from Windows. It's actually being on Linux already and being used to this in certain distros. And you're right when you say it, but even Unity had search. So I think it's something that's almost quote unquote expected. But you're right. If this is something that you could get used to and don't mind, and you know, I just think it's one of those things that if you had to take a percentage, that would be a little bit smaller percentage, don't you think, of users?
See, I don't know, because I mean, I've been on Linux for more than 20 years, but you know, I've always got a mouse in my right hand now. It's just the way I run. I almost never use the super key to get anything in, no matter what. You know, even when I'm running GNOME or Mate, I'm moving the mouse up and clicking, or you know, right clicking on the desktop. I've got that mouse in my right hand and my left hand on the keyboard. I don't look for the super key. It's an afterthought at best for me when I'm trying a new distro.
And I'm also wondering how many Windows users actually use the super key as well, or the Windows key, and don't use the mouse to get to the menu.
Only power users and developers.
From my experience, most people use the mouse.
All right, we're getting a little off track here. We got to get on track to stay on time. So, Colin, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Rocco.
You're a little low, dude. You're a little low.
Very low.
You get your audio sorted out, Colin. We'll be back to you, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Don, are you there, sir?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. What's going on?
All right. Yeah, I did try Bodhi like around 5 o'clock today, but I tried getting it working. Like everyone said, the super key couldn't really get used to that. The left click. I mean, overall, I've tried it before when I think about a couple of years ago, and I liked it, but this time around, I just really couldn't get used to it. But again, it probably needs a little bit more than 2 hours to get used to a distro. But I mean, for what it is, it seems pretty nice. I mean, that's my thoughts on it.
All right.
And I'm sure it's geared towards a specific audience.
It is, Don. And there are people that out there that I'm telling you, there are people that will enjoy this if they tried it. But just so you know, welcome back. Haven't seen you since Self, right?
Yep. It's been a crazy few weeks, so
it's all good. Colin, did you get that audio working?
How am I sounding?
Perfect, sir. What's going on?
Okay, except for the voice. Winter's got to me. So.
It's summertime here, Colin. Why are you sick, dude?
Yeah, I don't know. Go figure.
Did you try Bodhi?
Yes, I did. I've actually got it running on a second laptop. I had it running on my Toshiba laptop to start with, which has a 1920 by 1080. This one has, I think, a 1366 by 768. I can see things a lot better on this laptop here with the lower display because everything seems to be like minimal in Bodhi. And I find that, it's a bit like LXQT or Antix where, windows open up really tiny and small. You've got to open them up. That's one thing I've noticed with it, but it's not a bad distro anyway. It's a bit strange it doesn't have any home folders. Did everyone else experience that, or was there something else that you were meant to do on install to get that?
That's a feature. You can just run it
like a bug.
That's a feature, not a bug.
That's probably a result of the development process. They probably develop it in a CH root in a weird way, and when it creates your user account, it uses some command that just makes the home folder, not everything inside the home folder.
No, that is actually by design. The developers don't like to populate everybody's home folder with a bunch of predetermined folders, so they decide not to run that command. It's very easy though. It's already installed. There's just, I can't remember the command off the top of my head, xdg something or another.
Yeah, it's something like that. I did that in Arch, I'm pretty sure. I can do that.
It creates all the folders for you, and then you're a happy-go-lucky guy again.
Okay, sure, no worries. I just thought I'd point that out, but that's fair enough. It gives you a choice whether you want them or not, so that's okay. Also, I found that the App Center didn't have a lot of apps in it. Not a huge amount, but there is a lot more if you decide to install through apt. So does that make sense, Steve? That there's not a lot on the when you get
when you go to that is their app center is kind of meant to be kind of like the software boutique and
okay.
Not something that gives you every single application. That's why Synaptic is there in the app pack. You can use that to install every application or just app from the command line, install whatever's you can install in Ubuntu.
Sure, no worries. Okay, that all makes sense. I found the tooltip pretty cool. It's like transparent. Got a really good look about it, so that was quite good. And yes, I did discover the if you go to the Windows button when you got an application open and you right click on it, you take your mouse to the top and go to the right hand menu. you can add it to the favorites. Then you got your right-click favorites, which was pretty cool. I discovered that, I think, while I was making a video about it. And it just happened while I was making the video. I didn't even know that was a thing. So I did add to the favorites, but I didn't know where the favorites were. So that was a bit bizarre. But yeah, that was a pretty a nice discovery there. But overall, I find it not a bad little distro. The only thing is, I think people are all well aware now that the updates it does just sit there. You've got to close the terminal or terminology and then restart, and your updates are up to date. So they're just a bit of a bug there. I think everyone's well aware of that. So, but overall, it's not a bad distro. Sort of not for me. I don't like the minimalistic type desktop environment. I prefer something a little bit, I don't know. So can you say modern? It does look. There's a few comments there. It looks old and old and modern at the same time, which is, I agree with that. So, but it's probably not something I would run on a daily basis. But
I like Kevin's charming.
Yeah,
sorry,
charming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, I must say. So that was my experience. It's a good experience. There's nothing wrong with the distro itself. It's definitely there for somebody, just not for me.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much indeed. Dark One. We know you tried Bodhi, so
I would never.
What we really want to know is what ridiculous hardware you put it on.
Sony Vaio Duo 11. It's my test machine for everything.
Okay.
Well. See, here's the reason. It's got a touchscreen, so I'm curious to see how distros do with touchscreens, and it's got an optical mouse as opposed to the normal trackpad. So GTK usually does not do well on these typical machines. Yet KDE based distros and stuff these do. It's weird, but this is one of the few things that use GTK libraries that actually works out of the box. No weird configurations or the other stuff. Scaling. I know, Barb, I think you mentioned something about the lack of scaling. If you actually go into the settings in the settings panel, there's a way to, if you go to look and all the way down to the second to last one, scaling's right there. Then it gives you a different predetermined things to scale to. So
but it wouldn't keep them on with the one laptop that I used. That was
okay. I was wasn't sure.
Yeah, but I did play with that. Yeah, that drove me crazy.
As far as Bodhi overall, it depends on what you're looking for. I remember when Bodhi was literally 3 applications, and Steve, you know what I mean when I say this. It was literally the web browser, LeafPad, and Synaptic. The whole point of Bodhi is, at least originally from Jeff anyway, that I understand, was minimalistic. Here's a base, here's Enlightenment, do what you will with it. It was basically Arch for Ubuntu users with a predetermined DE. I really appreciate that, because a lot of the cruft that comes with a lot of the other distros is just annoying. As far as my experience overall, I've used Enlightenment, I've used Moshka, I've used D17, 16, 22, take your pick. If you know your way around it, you're fine. As far as new users, yeah, it's going to be different. But if the thing that I think a lot of us forget is a lot of these distros that we try are going to be niche distros.
Mm-hmm.
We have over 300. If you're just going by distro watch numbers, we have over 300 different distros. Do you seriously think all of those are going to be specific to every single general and new user? No. That's where Bodhi falls into me. I would recommend this to people who have not multi-monitor, apparently. Is that something that's getting fixed, Steve? Like, is that a known issue?
You're muted, Steve.
Yeah. I was kind of curious about that. I'm not sure about Zeb's issue because he has, way more monitors than I think developers could ever hope to have plugged into their systems. But I used it with an external monitor attached to a laptop every single day for a year. But I'm wondering, Barb said that it didn't work when she plugged it in. Did you plug it in and then reboot the computer? Because
I tried I plugged it in and it didn't work. Then I said, okay. So I shut down the computer, left it plugged in, and rebooted it, and it still wouldn't see it.
Okay.
So I did try, and I didn't know if it was Bodhi or maybe it just could not recognize the monitor or something. I don't know. I mean, it's just a standard 27-inch Acer monitor. It's not.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I have too. I've got a standard 23-inch Acer monitor.
It's a 1080 monitor, so it's not like it's weird. Not like Zeb's got ones with.
So I know it does work with multi-monitor support, but it apparently your mileage may vary.
Right, it might have worked with a newer machine.
I was just curious, but as far as my overall feelings on it, go into it with an open mind. This is the same thing anytime you go to any distro. Look at what the developers are aiming for. How close to the goal are they getting to that? And really, at the end of the day, if they miss the mark, let them know it. If they don't, and praise them for where they're hitting it.
Mm-hmm. Good comments. That actually reminded me. Yes, I did try the scaling thing, and that was one of the other reasons that turned it away. Because as soon as I clicked any scaling, poof, the screens were just gone, and I had to reboot. So yeah, I don't know whether it's just unique to my setup, but yeah, it was quite strange. But Steve, now tell us all the reasons why we should be using Bodhi.
All right, I don't know if I have a reason you should.
So tell us what you find good about it.
I encourage you to go to the discourse. I wrote a couple of lengthy posts there that kind of go into why you might want to use it. I'm somebody who basically I had to live with hand-me-down hardware for the most part, so I end up maybe having older machines. I think the newest machine I have is 6 years old, and that's got Windows on it because I need that one program for work that only runs on Windows. But otherwise, most of my machines are older than that. So having something like Bodhi was really awesome because I could have a computer at work and a computer at home. And the computer at work only had 2 gigs of RAM and really bogged down every time you opened a web browser with every other desktop environment under the sun. But when I ran Bodhi on there, or Bunsen Labs, which is an open box, heavily modified open box, it just worked so awesome. But I switched over to Bodhi, and because I feel that Bodhi does a great job of providing you with a graphical desktop environment that is just as lightweight as a tiling window manager, but you don't have to know all of the kung fu command from the CLI to set up your system and to configure things. Bodhi just lets you do it very easily with very little work, using GUI programs to do most of your configuration with, or if not all of your configuration. And then you just get to work. What I loved about it is once I had it kind of set up with the panels where I liked them, and once you know that favorites menu that Colin referred to as the right-click menu on your desktop, that thing is awesome. And by the way, you guys really need to check out the Everything Launcher, because the Everything Launcher is like KRunner and everything else. And
now you tell us, right?
All you gotta do is a keyboard shortcut, and bang, you're just like typing away, and you can open up anything. That Everything Launcher is fantastic.
How do we get that going?
I forget what the default is. I always map mine to try Windows key space. That's what I map mine to. I can't remember if that's it or if it's Windows key something else. But it'll open up Everything Launcher.
Yes, that's what it is, Windows space.
Okay, so Windows space. And by the way, yes, it has to be a key combination. Now that's a leftover thing from Enlightenment. They don't have the capability to have a keyboard shortcut that's a single key. So you have to have Windows key something or Control something, Alt something in order to have things launch. But once you're willing to, put up with that thing, you can do an awful lot with Everything Launcher. When I ran Bodhi, I basically launched every program that I ever used with the Everything Launcher. I'd use Windows key space and boom.
Well,
that's pretty cool.
Just as Nate is like the spokesman, not unconfirmed spokesman for OpenSUSE, I think Bodhi ought to hire you for their marketing.
Mm-hmm. I would love to help Bodhi. I actually really love their community. They are a very friendly community. They have developers that really care.
Yep.
But they only have 3 developers and only 2 guys that can code. And I kind of got into the community. And I said, hey, how can I help? I can answer some questions in the forum. I did that. I answered some. I really don't like discourse, but I ran it just for Bodhi's sake. So I could be in their channel regularly and answer some of their support questions for people, because a lot of the same questions get asked over and over, like where's the installer? They're going to fix that in the respin. That's one of the known issues that they know they have. They didn't think it was that big of a deal because when you boot up, you can choose either to install or run the live environment. They figured if people were going to choose a live environment, that you weren't going to be interested in installing it from there. So they didn't think it was that big of a deal, but obviously it was a big deal for a lot of people. It's probably the most common thing that gets asked on Discord.
Well, I actually booted into the live CD, the live environment, and then couldn't find it in the menus and just gave up and rebooted onto the USB so I could install it.
Yeah, and the other reason why they've kind of done a fork of, and this kind of gets back to something that Dark One was referring to, there is a mix of E17 fork of E17 with Moksha, and then more modern things from E22 and beyond. And the reason for that is that they're in a difficult position, because as developers, they forked E17 because E17 was stable, and some of the versions of Enlightenment after E17 brought in a lot of instability. I know I tried to run E22, which at the time, and I don't know if they've gone to E23 yet, but at the time it was the latest version that you could run on OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. And I enjoyed it. It was Enlightenment. It was kind of neat, but at the same time, it crashed a lot. So Moksha was way more stable. But then the trouble with that, though, is you have those Enlightenment libraries in the back end that continue to be updated. So you're trying to keep this old E17 desktop, but you have to use the more modern E22 applications and gadgets and widgets on your panels and shelf, or as they call them, shelves. And so it does create some issues. And I know that the developers run into a number of bugs. I found a bug like in the text editor, for example, and it was because the versioning of the back end Enlightenment library changed, and they changed something in that library that then broke the text editor, so that it introduced a bug. And so with only 2 guys that know how to code, and the coding, I guess, for Enlightenment is not easy. I asked, how could I help? And they basically said, well, we need more coders. Well, I can't code my way out of a paper bag, as Noah. And so that wasn't very helpful to me. But I asked, what would I need to learn? And they said, well, start by learning maybe some Python so that you could interface with the Enlightenment libraries using Python. But that's not going to get you very far. So then you'd have to learn C, and then after you learn C, well, then you have to learn Enlightenment and their libraries, which are a whole nother animal and beast all of themselves. And then you need to get on their mailing lists so that you can ask the Enlightenment developers specific questions when you're having trouble. It was a very complicated process, and they even admit, the 2 guys who can code say, this isn't easy, yet they're really the only guys who code. Jeff does a lot of the packaging, from what I understand, and a lot of the support. He's been doing some support lately, but he's not one of the coders. There's basically 2 of the development team that are coding and trying to fix some of those bugs that come into the desktop and the Enlightenment apps. I don't know if anybody tried the ePhoto app. I really like the Enlightenment photo app. It looks a little different, as most of Enlightenment applications do, but the functionality in the photo app I thought was really nice compared to some of the other offerings you have in the GTK or Qt world. So I'd recommend that. I recommend the Everything Launcher as well. I would not recommend their text editor. Just install something else, LeafPad or Pluma. Their file manager is okay. That's
PC Man FM.
I don't think they use PC Man FM, do they?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Because it looks like PC Man.
At least in the standard it is.
Mm-hmm. So sorry to interrupt, Steve, but it's getting a bit late, and we do need to move on if that's okay. So you
right
have
ahead.
written some
I'll
great
stop
stuff
your leading
on our
for
Discord channel. Yeah. All right, Big Pod, did you try Bodhi?
Nope, I didn't try.
Oh, you've been busy chopping wood. How did that go?
It's summertime. Why are you chopping wood, dude?
Because we need to get ready for winter, so
okay,
then you can just move it from pile to the burn room and then just burn it.
He's getting ready to ship it to Colin.
Yeah, Colin needs it. All right, Steve, how are you?
Hey, gentlemen, how you doing tonight?
Pretty good. Did you try Bodhi?
Yeah, I did. I worked with it a little bit. I posted a video on it. The live environment started up right away. Probably my little thing, I don't know if you guys talked about it, it was kind of hard to find the install.
Yes.
I had to dig through the menu to find that. But once it did, it installed really quick, although the updates took a long time. I actually had left. I started it, left, picked up my son, came back, and it was still running, and it was gone for about 20 minutes or so. There was a ton of updates. Otherwise, as Colin, and some of the guys said earlier, it's kind of this modern but old. I did like the way you can customize the shelves, as they call them. Kind of like Gnomish, where you could just, click on move and then move the box where you want, and then they lock into place. I thought that was really nice. I thought it was themed pretty well. I did change the icon theme. I think the icon theme kind of, just eye candy for me. But I liked how when I was doing my video, I had simple screen recorder going. I brought up Chromium. I had a YouTube video. In fact, your last spotlight, and it was barely 900 megs of memory being used, so it's pretty efficient on that. I mean, is it something that I would use every day? Not. I almost thought about putting it on my netbook that I have running slideshows on, but I decided to try to plug a monitor into it, and now it doesn't show on the screen at all. So I don't know what I went in there, but yeah, I mean, I know most of you guys talked about probably a lot of the niggles in that, but a little different, but it wasn't so.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks very much indeed for that, Steve. Joshua, welcome from the pool party. You're up next, my friend. So we are running a little bit late. So if you can keep it short, how did you find Bodhi?
Small talk. So I love Bodhi, and I thought that it's not the best, but hey, it's green color, and I'm not shocked that Nate likes it. And another thing I realized is that when I ran the classic neofetch command, the window manager was Moshka or something like that. But the thing I love about Linux distros is that if they make their own desktop or own window manager, you should try to test it because it can open something new that might give you an awesome flavor to help you with your desktop and you'll learn more about it. And I think that's perfect. And the Bodhi Linux community seems like it's growing and everybody likes it. I think that a little more hard work, maybe improve the themes a tiny bit and make it seem a little modern. And maybe this might be one of the next big distros. And I give Bodhi Linux a thumbs up. I'm going to keep it on my list of GNOME boxes. And yeah, back to cannonballing.
Excellent. Thanks very much indeed, Joshua.
All right. That is our take on Bodhi Linux. I think it's a great distro for what it is. It's not for me, but I would love to see the developers continue. And yeah, I appreciate everything that they do. All right. So there has to be some admin going on here, I guess. And I guess I just want to explain what Biddle is and what it isn't. Why Biddle even exists. So originally, it started out as just me doing a live stream. And it grew to having people on, moving nights, first being called Friday Night Live, and then moving to Saturday, and it moved times. So we changed the name to BigDaddyLinux Live because I never knew what night it was going to be on. So we didn't know if we were going to have to change this. But I just want to say a couple things of what it's not. It's not about a popularity contest. It's not the place to be the best distro reviewers. Although everybody can see that Biddle is growing, and we're to the point now where we usually run into second pages on Zoom, and that's awesome. But Biddle should not be about growing. It should be about just what it is about, which is where anybody can come and have their opinion count just as much as the next person sitting next to them that may be a developer or a distro maintainer or a coder or something else. It's not about finding, like the distro challenge itself is not about finding the ultimate distro, or we would be better served, our time would be better served if we tried this distro or Gentoo or Calculate or Arch Linux or Astra Linux or whatever it may be. This is about us getting together, talking, having a good time, and talking about the subject that we love. In that, we try out distros, and it shouldn't be about we shouldn't try this distro or we shouldn't try this distro. I would think we would want to try every distro. And are there times where we may cover the same thing, like somebody might cover the same, like tonight, for example, we covered the fact that you can't find the install shortcut multiple times. Multiple people did that. But in a show like this, you're going to have that because that's just the way it is when it's an open format show. And I want each and every one of your opinions to count just as much as the next person does. And that's what Biddle is supposed to be about. It doesn't matter if you have a pedigree in Linux or you are a developer. You can come onto the show and talk about Linux just like anybody else. So with that in mind, going forward, we have to make changes to the distro challenge because we are getting bigger. And one of those reasons, like last week and this week, we went over a little time. We went almost an hour and 40 minutes on Debian last week. And that is not a terrible thing. But if you're not interested in Debian, you're probably not going to find the show very interesting. So we need to somehow limit the time without limiting the discussion. And that's a very hard thing to do. I don't want to leave anybody out of the discussion. So we're kicking around a couple of us that are here, Zeb, Eric, Dan, Frank, Adam. A couple of guys are kicking around ideas of what we can do to minimize that. And one of the things that we're going to try to do is, from this moving forward, we're going to try whatever distro we try will be for 2 weeks. So that, number one, it gives more time for us to try it. We're not rushed into if we didn't have time this week to try it. Two, that will give any developers that would like to be here to talk to us about it, that will give them more time to be here. And I think if we do it the right way, there's a couple options that we can go, but I think if we do it the right way, where we have some of the people talk in the first week and the rest of the people talk in the second week, everybody gets their say and nobody's left out, and yet we can still talk about a distro for a decent amount of time and then talk about everything else. So
yeah, when we were talking about this, the question is, right, how do you leave it be, like Rock was saying, I mean, the whole point is we all want to hear what everyone else thinks. That's the whole point of this, right? And we all want to have enough time and space to do it. And we referenced specifically the Biddle Europe that we did, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, where it was a fewer people, so there was just more room, and it just felt a little easier. And so when we were talking about, well, if it was every 2 weeks, and one of the things I've been trying to do is engage with maybe the distro developers themselves and say, hey, can you come on? Would it be something that you can do? And it's hard to ask someone, maybe it's by like Monday or Tuesday, I thought to do that. And it's like, hey, what are you doing Saturday night? It's tough to do that. And so this kind of gives us a little more time to engage other people. And also maybe that first week, maybe some of us had a chance and really got into it and want to talk about it and are excited about it and, you know, want to give that feedback, and awesome, do it. And then the next week is, like Rocco said, available for the rest of the time, and it still leaves time for all the other stuff we want to talk about as well. So sorry, Rocco,
it's all good.
Yeah, no, I think everybody's right. Everybody enjoys coming here because we do have that different people using it for different reasons and in different ways. I'm astonished every week that I've done my review, I've looked at it as best I can, and then Colin picks up this, and Nate picks up that, and Dave will pick up something else, and Dark One will pick up, and I'm thinking, how did I miss this? Is this not part of my workflow? You know what I mean? I just find it amazing that with this wealth of people, we get so many different aspects of it that we didn't think. Joe loves to make sure that the Windows key works. I'm like Dave. I tend not to use the Windows key, but then another day I'll use the Windows key and well, why was that not working? It's just strange. So I think the idea of doing it every 2 weeks will be great.
There's Big Pot's chair.
I don't think he was moving, was he?
He was.
He was. Okay. I think the difficult part is going to be if we get too many people excited about a distro, we can't have 15 of the 22 talking about it in week one. So you'll have to bear with Rocco and me and everybody else who tries to help the show run. If you don't get picked the first week, it's not because we don't think you're interested. It's not because we don't think you've got something to say. We're just trying to manage the time, because not everybody loves sitting here talking about a distro. People want to hear about other things that have happened in the Linux news. And this will give us a way. At the moment, it looks like we're only going to have about a half hour to discuss that. So it's a bit limiting. We want the show to become more balanced, but without losing everybody's impact. Because, as I said, I'm just astounded how people find things and I think, I didn't think to check that way. I must remember next time, and the next time comes along and I totally forget again. So I think it's going to be a good move. And if I may be so bold as well, the other thing that we're going to try and do is, if you want to have your say in what distro we're going to use, jump on Discourse, put your ideas. We'll create a list. The guru that is Mr. Adams will then, maybe at the end of the first week, put up a poll and say, okay, these are the 12 that we've come up with. Which 3 do you want to try? And we'll pick the top 3, but with the proviso, Rocco gets the ultimate choice. Otherwise, if we don't have someone doing that pick, we'll waste the next 25 minutes arguing about the pros and cons of Fedora. Let's do that on Discourse. So with that said, back to you, Rocco.
Well, look, if you're looking for, like I said, the most technical review of a distro, this is probably not the place for you to be. There's many other outlets for that, and there's many, better people than that. This is for people who want to come and enjoy themselves while they're checking out a distro and get the opinions of everyday users and developers all in one. So, with that said, there's going to be a lot of changes as far as it's going to be fluid, where we're just trying to work this out. Like I said, we are growing, and with that come growing pains, and we have to find the best way to do it as we're growing. And right now, to me, that is going every 2 weeks, number one. Number two, that is, I thought it was an awesome idea to put it in the forums, in Discourse, to put it out there as far as here's some distros that we're going to collectively look at and then narrow that down and then end up picking one. So I think at the end of this, once we work everything out, it'll actually work out pretty well.
Steve made one more good point, which was that people have been, which I've been surprised to see this week, and I know people are probably sick of hearing Discourse by now, but I'm going to keep saying it. People really jumped in and we had people write a tutorial on how to install Arch. We had people doing distro reviews. There's a lot of stuff that we try to fit in here because this is like the 2 hours we get, right? That I think works really well in that format. It gives us a chance to hash it out and talk about it. And then maybe here we come and we can discuss some of that, but that is it just seems like a logical place to be able to put down your thoughts, to have some of those discussions, and then come here and be sort of primed for like what's happening. What are we going to talk about? You know.
Yep. Joe.
I was just going to say too, you know, a lot of times too lately, as you know, I've been struggling to try to do these distros because I do feel a sense of obligation in my own mind. I would almost rather, if I don't have any substance to really offer for myself, and maybe it's an idea for any of us that do have that, you just do the quick, you know, polite next, as you said. I tend to like to talk, as you know, like last week we talked about hardware and how it could relate to Linux and things like that. So if maybe I'm one of the people that can offer more that way than on the distro side of things, you know, I'd be glad to do that as well. And one of the things, I just want to say this quickly, not to start a whole other discussion. The Windows key for me, like I mentioned in the side chat, was it's because of a 34-inch monitor. It's the travel. There's a lot of aspects, I guess, is the only point I want to point to. And I do use the keyboard and mouse. So everybody does things that works for them. But whatever I can do to help, you know, it's wonderful. This is actually a good problem to have because the show has grown and it is a fun place to hang out. And it is getting a little convoluted because of everybody's got the same passion. So, but that's my 2 cents.
Big Pod.
I do like the idea of going 2 weeks, which allows, even if 1 week with more talk about the distro, we can next week then talk more about other topics. Also, I do think we should more like long reviews should be kept on Discourse and hear more or less the main talking points, what you want to talk about.
Well, you know, Eric had made the analogy, if 25 people talk for 5 minutes, you know, do the math. Like there's just not enough time to get it all in.
Yeah. Right.
So, and 5 minutes is not really a long time to have a discussion with. So there's no possible way we can do this amount of people with giving everybody a massive amount of time. Now I don't, we need to walk that fine line because I don't want to stifle the discussion. I don't want to say, hey, you know what, you only get 30 seconds of time, so make it quick. Like that's not what's going to happen, and that will never happen. But we do need to somehow control some of the time so that we can make it a show that everybody wants to watch. Barbara?
Yeah, I think that actually splitting it so that you have, you know, we do one distro every 2 weeks and half the people, half of whomever does, you know, has their little review or whatever it is for 1 week and the other half the other week. And that also gives people time. I mean, I know there are times I haven't even had time to even download one, let alone to even look at it. But if I had had that extra week, then I could have been better than saying, nah, I didn't do it.
When I think about something tonight too, sorry, Bob, like where we all were saying, well, we wish we could have a way to launch applications, and Steve's just like, well, yeah, it's everything launcher. Like, had we known that week 1,
everybody would have been way better in week 2.
I discovered it by accident. So yeah. But then the other thing is, I like the idea of putting a more detailed, I don't know if we want to call it a review, but it's like our you know, our experience with that distro. That's kind of like what I did. And that was way longer with a lot more information than what I said here. And I like that idea of have a place to put a more detailed comments and so on about what you found on a distro. I like that.
To Joe's point, you know, like I have a specific laptop. If someone said to me, I installed it on a laptop that is either the same or similar, and I had this issue and I was able to overcome it, that's incredibly useful, and maybe something that's better put into the forums so that I can refer back to it at some other point.
I got a bigger problem at the moment. I just ran out of coffee.
Oh my goodness!
I mean,
that is a big issue.
Would you like some
terrible issue?
Caffeine IV stat.
Guess I'll have to settle for water.
So, do you want to jump in and tell us what our 3 distros are this week, Rocco?
All right, so there's a pretty good list here of probably 10 or 11 distros. So we're just going to narrow it down real quick and say that we're going to choose between Zorin, Regolith, and Netrunner. So
who
would
vote? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is we also need to probably take a vote to get the feel of who would want to do what, and then we'll just make a decision on that.
All right, so if you run through them and ask people to put their hands up, and me and Eric will try and count.
All right, Zorin OS. You guys do the counting, not me.
That's a majority.
That's 11.
Yeah,
well,
it's a
we didn't
majority.
bother going anywhere else.
Okay, well then, fine. Then we will. Then this 2 weeks challenge will be Zorin OS, and again, like I said, I'm not sure what's going to happen next week. Maybe we will do like some people have suggested, like quick, tiny reviews in the first hour next week, and then the next week we'll do the full review, or which I think would probably work out better is we do 1 hour next week of people's takes on the distro. And we'll try to work with people. If you're not going to be here the following week or something like that, you got something planned, you want to go this week, we'll work with people on that. But I think if the first week we give 1 hour discussion, that will leave plenty of time in the second week to give whoever didn't get a chance in the next hour.
And in the spirit of open source and the community as a whole, it's actually quite interesting because Toss just did a very interesting interview with Artanim, who's one of the main developers of Zorin OS. So if you want to go and hear about this chap who lives down in Dublin in Ireland and helps with his brother and a few other people do Zorin, I found it a very, very informative interview. And we also did one on Destination Linux about a year ago now, I guess. So there's plenty of information if you don't know what Zorin is about.
And I'm also going to say that each week, whenever we do, or every other week now, there'll be a thread in the forum to at least announce it, how to get it, what it is. And as people try it, if you want to throw in some commentary on what you're doing, how you're using it, if you have problems, if you have a question, if you're having a problem and you want to ask in the group, that's all good stuff. You know, don't feel like, and Barbara was a great example this week. She asked about how can I change the window buttons on the windows in Bodhi, and it turned out that it was actually pretty complicated, but she got that question answered pretty quickly because Steve was participating.
Rocco, and what about the idea if we're not going to be here, instead of jumbling people around because maybe we're not going to be here the second week, we just do our quick highlight points in this course, and then you can do like you do with the emails, just read those quick bullet points and boom, down, we're done.
That's Joe, please go to the forums and put that in the discussion there so that we can keep track of all these ideas. Because like I said, it's going to be fluid. It's not, this is how we're going to do it. We just need to come up with a better plan that we have because of the fact that we're growing. So we'll work it out. We'll iron it out as we go. So.
And I've noticed a couple of comments already in the chat that people think you've got to pay $39 for Zorin. You haven't. There is a free version that is 100% free and 100% functional. If you want to support the community, then you can buy like an ultimate version that they throw in a lot more goodies for your donation.
Well,
so it is 100% free.
The idea behind that is that, and the reason that I am okay with that is because the ultimate version does not give you any more as far as being able to run the system than the free version. The free version has exactly what the ultimate version has, except for the customization layouts that they add to the ultimate version, which allows you to customize the system easier. So you're not getting anything less with the free version, and I'm perfectly okay with that. That's a way to make money for the distribution.
Yep. I was going to say, thank you, Zeb. I was going to mention about there is a free version.
All right. Anybody want to bring up anything while we have some time?
I run Gentoo.
Yes, Zeb, please talk about that real quick. That was part of the stream today. That was fascinating. You guys did a lot of good work today.
Yeah, we finally got it, and I've got a desktop up and running, XXFCE, and I've got a browser. And very strange choice. They decided to compile OBS Studio first. Why? Not quite sure, but hey, I could have thought of a few more functional things than that. And then, unfortunately, Mrs. Surge was getting the hump with Mr. Surge sitting in her front room chatting about Linux all afternoon. So he had to quickly end the stream. But what was really, really interesting is I couldn't hear it on my stream, but apparently Mrs. Surge was playing radio in the background and there was music.
Yes, there was. Definitely.
I got a copyright notification. Not a strike, but an email saying, oh, we noticed that you were playing blah, 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 and it was by so-and-so somebody. Now, I'm astonished because I couldn't hear a thing.
Yeah, you could hear it. Definitely.
Yeah, so it was, for me, it was really, really interesting, but I have to, believe it or not, go back and watch them, because when you're just sitting there typing instructions that Serge is blattering out, you don't really concentrate on what you're doing. You don't really fully understand what's happening. But I guess the biggest experience for me is, okay, install Gentoo yourself. But unless you're going to pick apart Portage, unless you're going to pick apart eMerge, unless you're going to pick apart EIX, you haven't got a clue what you're doing. You're just following a wiki. The same as if you install Arch, you're just following a wiki. Unless you want to get deep down and dirty and study these applications, you don't really learn anything just by installing it. At least I don't. And what I'm most fascinating to see is, having spent what I guess will end up being 12 hours installing Gentoo, my big question will be, is it worth it? What has this given me that I couldn't have got by installing Calculate, or I couldn't have got by installing Peppermint and having it fully up and running in 40 minutes? Is it quicker?
You now understand what C flags are?
Say again?
You now understand what C flags are?
I know they're there. I don't even begin to understand why you have to use them. And I also don't understand why you have to keep making reference to package.use when you just want to install a package. Is that what package managers normally cope with for you? And that with Gentoo, you're just having to tell it, well, I want you to install this, and you get it from here, and it relates to that, and it can do all these things. It just seems very, very convoluted, but I'm finding it riveting. I love doing it.
So why don't you compile a package manager?
Because I wouldn't even know the first place to start. And just in case somebody is having the idea of installing Gentoo themselves, something that you didn't see, or you might have seen in the first stream, was when we went into the kernel configurator. How are you supposed to know which one of those 2,000 pieces of information relates to your equipment? That's just mind-bogglingly complicated. And also,
let me just mention that that's a tool that makes it easier.
Yeah, but how do you know which bit to go in? I mean, even Serge and Adrian were struggling to find out which bits to turn on and off for Gentoo, and we eventually got a kernel that worked. But as you saw today, boom, we got a bit about Nvidia wrong, so we had to quickly recompile the kernel. And one thing I need to say as well is, don't multi-distro hop if you're going to be trying to compile kernel, because I don't know if anybody saw the stream, but thank you, Pop OS, for deciding to move /boot. How dare you? Who gave you permission? I said, install yourself on this drive with this EFI and leave that alone. And we go in there today and /boot has been moved to a completely different hard disk. How did it do that?
So
why?
You didn't set
That's a feature.
It defaulted to
it's a feature.
SDA is.
I had turned every single EFI off, including Gentoo's one, so that I only had the EFI on SDA. And it still messed with Gentoo, which was on SDF. Crazy.
Zeb, I don't know if I don't know if it's still in the Gentoo instructions, but back in the dark ages when I used to compile Gentoo from stage 1, they used to recommend at the very beginning that you make a list of all your hardware in your system and have it with you as you're going through the other steps, so that when you come across something like compiling the kernel, you're going through the different options within it. You have the list of hardware right in front of you, so it's really easy to tell which ones you need to flip which way.
Yeah, gave that to Serge and Adrian, and they still struggle because the Threadripper and the RTX is still so new.
Yeah.
So much so that I learned from the Endeavour devs this week that Nuvo doesn't even support RTX card yet.
Zeb, I have a very important question for you.
Go on in.
Have you changed the text to speech on all of your devices to French? So that you get
No, I just sit there and wait patiently while the two of them natter away. And what I also found quite amusing was Steve on the thread trying to say that he spoke French when he was obviously Google translating. I found that quite amusing. But anyway, enough about my exploits. What else have we got?
Well, there is a new podcast coming out called Linux for Everyone, and this is Jason Evangelo's personal podcast that he's creating, and it'll be pretty much him talking about Linux distros, some of the music he's involved with. There was an episode 0, which was probably only like 8 minutes long, that explained what Linux for Everyone is going to be about. But I think it's going to be really exciting to listen to. So I think you should check it out. I'll put a link in the YouTube chat.
That's cool. I was wondering what he was going to do, because when he stopped doing Choose Linux, I knew he had to be up to something.
Well, I think he mentioned something. I missed what he did, and I never went back to listen to it.
He did mention that he was starting a different one.
Okay.
He mentioned it on his interview with DL that he had some stuff he was working on.
Good for him.
Does he mention why he's doing his own show? I thought Choose Linux was kind of neat, and it sounds like it's, Linux for everyone. Just a type alone sounds very similar to how Choose Linux was.
I think he just wanted to categorize his own adventure in Linux as opposed to the structured way that JB does stuff. That's all.
Yeah, plus he has more control over the show. He can do whatever he wants with it, and I think that's awesome to allow somebody to have that. So
yeah. So I was curious, has anyone that's running LTS Ubuntu used the new Nvidia kernel? I'm sorry, the new Nvidia driver. That was like a big deal that they enabled, the newest driver to be installed apparently in a very painless fashion.
Yeah, basically instead it's in your drivers. When you go to your Ubuntu drivers section, it'd be like adding the PPA without the PPA.
Right.
So it's very seamless. I think it's 430 if I remember. Like I forget Nvidia's
430. That's pretty good actually. But no, I haven't tried it. I haven't.
Okay.
No. So you said the guys about earlier about RTX. Are we never going to get games that run, ray tracing and whatnot for RTX?
Linux specifically?
Yeah.
I would have to say it's probably going to take a while. There was a time where several decades ago, probably before I was born, I was born in '99 for context. There was a time where games were rendered in one way, and I don't know what exactly the way that was, and then they moved to rasterization, which is what we currently do in most games. I heard somewhere that ray tracing is what's going to be next. When rasterization first came out, apparently it took forever for games to move to that because of how graphically demanding it was. But now all the games do it because it's fairly easy for computers now. Ray tracing will probably end up being the exact same way because it's extremely graphically demanding. Anybody who has an RTX card will tell you it drops their frame rate dramatically. Sometimes by more.
Well, what ray tracing does is before, when you were in a game and say the sun was shining on you and you would go say under a tree or under something that gave shade, the developers would have to actually code in there what it was supposed to look like going from the sun to the shade, where ray tracing actually operates like actual light in real life, where it will shine down and bounce off, reflect off to another location. So the hard coding is not there.
Now, what concerns me is, Thomas, is this new ray tracing thing, is this being dominated because that's what RTX or that's what Nvidia have built and everybody else has to follow because they're the biggest? Or is that what the game makers said they wanted, and this is Nvidia's way of accomplishing what they want?
it's a little. It's more of Nvidia. This is kind of what they want, but not exactly.
Yeah, because I can see a split coming up. Because AMD, despite your love for it or hate for it, is catching up big time.
Yeah. Part of the reason why they are trying to push this RTX is because if you've ever watched an animated movie and you've actually paid attention to the animation very closely, you'll notice recent movies, the lighting is more natural, more like what Rocco was just talking about. And the reason for that is because they actually do ray tracing in those movies. But it takes them minutes or sometimes hours to render a single frame of those movies. And that's why it takes so long sometimes for those movies to come out. But with these RTX cards, they could literally be doing the video editing as it's rendering. That way you could, you have your storyboard and you get all the stuff and you can work on the fly more easily, and you can pop out the movie in an hour and a half versus a month.
So it's basically a side effect of the computational ability of the new NVIDIA GPUs. Because they created the new GPUs for massive computational ability for other projects, and ray tracing just happened to be a beneficial side effect for gaming.
Well, it's not just about the lighting, though, you guys. It's also about the reflections and everything else, and the realism, because that's basically when you go to the movies now, and like you're describing, Thomas, you go watch a movie, a lot of times you can't tell that the background has been painted in, when in fact they're not in a real place. And if you look at some of the, like when NVIDIA did their presentation of it, they will show you a side-by-side comparison of one where a fire from a bomb that explodes may not show up in the reflection of a car or its windows or that kind of thing, or in the water. And now all that is realism is there. And it's all that calculations to get there.
Big Pod?
Yeah.
First of all, the how it's done is basically RTX cards have special processors just for RTX. Also, example of how a reflection so that will good work is, for example, in GTA 5 in Michael's house, when you have in toilet you have a mirror. Now you see just pixelation of something that is there. With ray tracing, you actually get a full reflection, which is good. But
somebody said in chat that the ray tracing is a gimmick, and I think in certain ways you can look at it that way, but I don't think, in my opinion, that it is a gimmick. When you play Battlefield 5 and you are on a street that has puddles, and through those puddles you can see a mirror reflection of what is reflecting off of it that looks perfect. That's not a gimmick. Sure, is it movie quality? No, of course not. It will take years for that to happen, but it is so much better than without it.
Yeah, I would say a lot of it depends on what you want. If you want your frame rates, like if you're a competitive gamer, you probably wouldn't bother with it.
But there's actually a benefit from a developer standpoint, because I develop games, and one of the things that you like if you take most of the AAA games you play today, the artists have been baking all the assets for a long time. There's a lot of work going into it, ambient occlusion and reflection maps and all these things. If you don't have ray tracing, basically you get all that for free if you get ray tracing, because you both get ambient occlusion ray tracing and you also get reflection ray tracing with RTX cards. So I think it will be a big deal. But I think I saw the Quake thing. Have you seen that, where they did that with ray tracing? It looks awesome. I mean, it almost looks like a modern game, and that's just with adding these ray tracing things. But I think it's definitely going to be a problem with high poly count models.
Yeah,
that's probably not.
If you look at Quake 2, what they were saying about the reflections, it's literally on the first level, the very first screen that you're on. You look to the right-hand side, and there's a mirror.
Yep.
And if you wait there long enough, a bad guy comes from behind you. And whereas before you might have just seen that as sort of like a blur going across the screen on your right-hand side, now you can also almost make out the facial features of that person that's behind you. So you quickly spin around, shoot it, and move on. And yet, walking through the water and all that sort of stuff, it just makes it so much more immersive. And I don't know if it's because it's the old Quake-style engine, but with the ray tracing effect, I don't get anywhere as motion sick as I get with games without it. And I don't know if that's because it's a more visually appealing thing, but if I jump on Ballistic Overkill, within 20 minutes, that's it, I'm done. I'll put the thing down. I spent 3.5 hours the other night on Quake, and I was so deeply into it, and I thought, oh, I've not felt sick once. This is fantastic. But I don't know if it's that specific type of movement in that game.
Think Ballistic Overkill has a pretty wide field of vision that can give you a little bit of a, I don't know what you call vertigo thing.
Motion sickness.
And I keep getting told you can change that, but I can't find it.
Well, going back to what you said, Thomas, about a lot of people will turn ray tracing off. Professional gamers might turn ray tracing off, but they're going to turn off pretty much. Professional gamers will probably turn off most settings that will make the game look good, just because they want every FPS that they can get. Okay.
Yeah.
But people like me who play games for how they look and how immersive they are, like when you play Battlefield 5, I will sacrifice 20 FPS for everything to look great around me. And I know that like there's guys that don't see the foliage or whatever, that I'm like, they see through it and I don't. But I don't really care about that, because what I care about is that game is awesome to play in that kind of environment. Chris?
I was just kind of curious. I mean, we seem to put a lot of emphasis on gaming, but what about the office productivity or engineering productivity? Like, I know at work, a lot of the guys that have been using the CAD software and CAM software have been using things like Cadra, which I find is a pain in the butt to install on Windows, because it doesn't follow the Unix or the Linux file paths, and trying to get it to translate to the Windows file paths gets to be a little bit annoying. But I mean, there really isn't a whole lot there to offer in replace of like Autodesk. And so I mean, for things to really kind of take off, it's not just the gaming, it's the productivity of the office, getting it accepted into the business world as a viable alternative to Windows. And that's, until that happens, really not going to see a desktop Linux go anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. I've been using Onshape for CAD engineering. It's pretty good. It's the guys from SolidWorks that wanted to do their own thing, and it's almost on par with SolidWorks and Inventor. So it's pretty good.
Nate?
I have this, so on the gaming thing, you talk about mirrors and whatever. So Thomas, back before you were born, there's this game called Descent 3. And one of my favorite games. And they had mirrors, and they worked great in there. In fact, it would be confusing because the reflections were so good in 1998. So what happened in the last, 21 years that we forgot how to do mirrors?
This is coming from the guy that likes the bouncy ball on Plasma.
We didn't
just
forget.
saying.
We didn't forget, but in Descent 3, every one of those reflections was hard-coded in.
Right.
Not computed on the fly during the game.
No, but like my ship was over the mirror. You could even shoot the mirror and make it all black, whatever.
Yeah. And every single one of those was hard-coded in. Every single reaction, every single.
Some games they had like a double scene behind the glass, so and then if you were walking in front of the mirror, they just copied you on the other side. Well, and some games they actually did two cameras. There was one camera that was at your point of view, and another camera that was kind of pointing the other way.
Yeah, Rocco, to your point about sacrificing stuff for a better atmosphere.
Yep.
I think that's what people don't understand when you say graphics. They just think it's like, oh, it's pretty. No, it's about the better atmosphere that it makes.
Yep.
To me, RTX is going to be something like, what is it, Pure Hair that Nvidia does? I believe, like in Tomb Raider, or any of this. You can play Tomb Raider, and without it on, it looks great, but the character models and with Lara's hair and stuff, or in Witcher 3, same deal.
Yep.
That it looks so much different because it has a more natural emphasis on the physics and all the other stuff that go with it.
To Chris's point, so Barco in chat said ray tracing is very useful in machine learning applications like TensorFlow. So that's cool too. Yeah,
that is cool.
And it can probably also be used in other places, from CAD and TensorFlow type AI ML stuff or gaming. I bet you could use it in other type of scientific applications, such as, what else could you use it in?
CFD, finite elements, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That is actually what it was designed for. The gaming aspect is just a byproduct.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a side effect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are out of time because we got to get through the last words. So there you go. That's what we have this week. So Zeb, last word.
I just want to say thank you, Rocco, for putting this on every week. I know it's a bit of a cliche now, but it is the highlight of my week. And just a big shout out to my other 3 podcasting friends, Noah, Michael, and Princess Ryan. I really do appreciate them guys. They put in so much work and allow me to join them every week. So yes, there's going to be a new Destination Linux recorded tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern. If you're a patron, jump on. If you're not a patron, why not? It's only $1.
And that's darn near free.
That is. You should. Eric, last word.
Thank you, Rocco, for doing this. This is an amazing place. I can't tell you how happy I am to be a part of this, and that I have you guys to hang out with, and look forward to seeing you all again next week. And have a great week.
Mm-hmm. And just before you go anywhere, Rocco, thank you, Eric, for Discourse. Absolutely astonishing.
Yes.
Really great work. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
It's been very, very helpful to have a great line of communication that doesn't scroll past you.
So, one quick thing I wanted to point out. So Rocco and I were talking yesterday, pardon me, how we've had, so there's a thread in there that is introduce yourself. And we've had people come in there that I've never heard of before. I've never seen in the YouTube chat. I've never seen on Telegram. I've never seen leave a comment. And all of a sudden here's 3, 4, 5 new people that, leave these great introductions and sound like amazing people that you want to, connect with. And so that to me is exciting, that we're giving someone who maybe isn't comfortable in this setting or isn't comfortable on Telegram a way to come in and be a part of the community.
Yep. I think that's the most exciting part about the forums. Joe, last word.
Thank you very much, as always, to everybody and their hard work and in getting together here. And I have since already put a link to the Discourse on here so I could change my input flow because when things go up in this old mind up here, it doesn't always stay. It goes right through here. So I try to get it out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited with it. And I look forward to the future of where the channel is going for you, Rocco. I really do. I think it's great.
Awesome. Nate, +1. Last word.
This is my cubicle Fritz.
Cubicle Fritz.
Yeah. So so thanks again, Rocco, and everybody, Eric, for all the work you've done on the Discourse site. That's really been a lot of fun for me. I appreciate it, and it's good hanging out with you again, all of you, every last one of you, especially you, Steve and Steve. So I will look forward to next week, and we'll have a good time.
Thomas, last word.
Well, thanks for having me on again. I probably will have a little bit of a crazy schedule coming up because I'm getting ready to go to college. So I may be on and off more often. But I hope to stay coming every week because I really do enjoy this discussion, and there's very, very few people around here who I can talk to about Linux. So being able to talk to all you guys kind of gives me my nerd fix for the week. RTX is weird. Check out DroggerOS at droggeros.org.
Thanks, Thomas. Chris, last word.
Every time I hear RTX, I keep thinking of Rooster Teeth's convention down in Austin. But anyhow, I don't have a whole lot more to say this week. Thank you, Eric, for Discourse. I find that I'm using that as a resource more than anything else that I have in the past few years. And I like the fact that I was able to put a long form of a topic of my experiences in installing the OS, and I think I'll continue doing that as a way just to keep my notes straight. So with that, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next couple weeks on the same subject. And everybody take care, stay cool. If you're in a hot environment, stay warm. If you're in a cool environment, and look forward to next week. Thank you.
Barbara?
Okay, obviously I want to thank you, Rocco, and Eric. You are doing a wonderful job with Discourse. I actually found it very useful. And I am things are falling off the desk. No, it's actually a drafting table, so it's at an angle. So yes.
I love it.
What, me?
I love it. Go ahead, Barb.
Okay. So anyway, I really like the idea of having one distro for 2 weeks, as opposed to this hurry up and let's get this one done and whatever. I think it will be better. And I'm not afraid of change. I think it's great. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Paul, last word.
Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me on. I also agree the 2-week challenge will be better because sometimes, I'm not as fast as some of the other people, and the week goes by too quick. So I think it'll give me more time now to learn and everything. So thanks, everybody.
I love that, Paul. Just saying. Tony, last word.
I always thank you for this every week, Rocco, and this week is no different. But I tend to forget to say thanks to Zeb because he's there helping and assisting and doing what needs to be done. And as for Discourse, Eric, I am absolutely amazed. That is a brilliant piece of work. And I find it useful. It's a really good thing. And as for the 2-week challenge, I think with the growing numbers of Biddle users, that's a good idea. If you split it in half 1 week, half the next week, or however you do it, it's going to keep you within your hour limit. And there'll be time for other discussion rather than before you know where you are, we've argued for 20 minutes about what distro we're going to do next. And then the show's over. So I think that's a brilliant idea.
Thank you, Tony. Tyler.
Just a second. Yep. Thanks for the show. Looking forward to the 2-week challenges now. And yep, that's it.
Way to be. Magnus?
Yes, Biddle is growing. We're going to be 1 million people here chatting on top of each other. It's going to be the Linux apocalypse year of Windows, and it's going to be complete, annihilation.
Well, I need all of your help. I need you all to go to zoom.us and go to their support page and request the Linux version of Zoom to have more than 25 people on one page.
Oh, yeah.
Because the Windows version has more than 25 people on it. You can go up to 49 people on the Windows version.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to fix the Linux version so that happens. So
that's just right. Well, thank you anyway. It's really cool to be here with you guys.
Good having you, Magnus. Jonathan, last word.
Thanks for having me, Rocco. It's awesome having found Biddle, because I don't have very many people in my life to talk about or talk to Linux about. But yeah, it's been fun here. Thomas, 99, man. God, I think I was. Yeah, I distinctly remember that year.
I'm one of the youngest people on here, bro.
All right, well, thanks for having me around, Rocco.
No problem, man. Kevin.
Yeah. Thanks, Rocco, for hosting again. Thanks, Eric, for everything you're doing to, keep things looking nice around here. Thanks, Steve, for showing up. Your expertise on Bodhi was greatly appreciated this evening. And other than that, we'll see you guys around.
Dave.
99. My son was already 8. For those of you in the U.S., happy National Ice Cream Day tomorrow. Apparently, this is now the year of the Biddle desktop. Thank you, Rocco, Eric, Zeb, and Dan for the wonderful foundation. Thank you, all of you here in Zoom, and thank you all in the YouTube chat for making this home for me. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Colin, last word, brother.
25 to 49, Rocco. That's absurd, I must say.
I agree.
Also, yes, I think the 2-week idea is great, especially if you got no voice like me today. I'll go next week. So I think that's a great idea. And yes, I always forget to thank Zeb because he does a lot of work behind the scenes. And I think, Eric, this Discord thing is awesome. I haven't been in there much this week. It took a while for those emails to come through, as you know. But I need to probably do a tutorial on how to use it if I can figure out how to use it. So,
hey, if you want to do a video, that'd be cool.
I'll figure out how to use it first. Anyway, enjoy every week. Thanks, Zeb, Rocco, and Eric. See you next week.
Don, last word, brother.
I just want to thank Rocco and Zeb, because you guys have really helped me out in my journey through Linux, and I look forward to being here. So thank you all.
Awesome. Matt, sir.
Rocco, Eric, Zeb, Dan, who is not here to join us. Appreciate all the work you guys do as a whole. Been loving Discourse. Eric, has been fun not having to scroll through 6,000 messages sometimes to try to find where your conversation is or if you got moved out of the conversation. So it's I'm looking forward to the new structure, see how this works. And just as an all, that I appreciate all the work that developers do, even the ones I rag on, that their hard work is appreciated and that they are doing great work despite some of the complaints that us as users may have. We appreciate their work nonetheless. And not all distros are meant for every user.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself. We are missing Dan and Frank, Bill.
And Adam.
Mm-hmm. And Adam. Adam's at a theater, though. He's having fun. Steve.
I'll let Adam know when I see him. I'll tell him you should have hit you.
Well, thanks, Rocco, for once again hosting. And I just want to give a big thank you to the whole community for actually giving Bodhi Linux a try. I think it's pretty awesome distro, and it's pretty amazing what such a small group of developers have done, really chasing their passion project and making it something that they love, which some of us can love as well. But also want to give a big thank you to the community for just being my weekly lug. I know I haven't been here very often lately. It is summertime. I like to be outside and have a little fun.
What's this outside you speak of, dude?
I know. It's great to be for us. But yeah, it's great to be here. Great to see all of you guys and have an opportunity to chat about Linux. Nate, you and I need to have another face-to-face meetup again. That's been too long. So, but yeah.
Indeed.
It's great to see everybody. And thanks again. And I will definitely be in Discourse, the forum. I've always loved forums since linuxquestions.org started.
Jeez.
Nice. Big Pod, last word.
Thank you guys for hosting this. Of course, Rocca, Dan, Eric, Zeb, you guys do quite the work here. And I do think a 2-week challenge will be a good thing. Maybe even allow us to do something harder, challenging, which 1 week doesn't really allow, since some might not understand it quite quickly and all that. So, in my opinion, that's a good idea.
Awesome. Steve, last word, brother.
I want to thank Eric and Nate this morning for helping me out. Great having someone to go to in the community to do that. And let's keep on rocking, Rocco.
Dig it. All right, that is going to wrap it up for us. Remember, the Biddle Distro Challenge is for 2 weeks. It will be Zorin OS. Did we put the link in the YouTube chat for Zorin?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Okay. And I thank everybody for being here. Check out the forums. It's definitely a happening place. And thank you all for your hard work. Until next time, long live Linux.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.